It's October 31st, 2021. I'm Todd Dunn, and today I am going for my first walk of the fall season in the Seawall Campground in Acadia National Park. Now, the campground has been closed for 2 weeks, so I shouldn't encounter too many tourists in there. Nobody's camping there. And we'll just walk around and see what the campground looks like here on the 31st of October. And you can see the gate behind me, which is closed. So just people walking the campground today. One of the reasons I'm walking in here today rather than taking one of the trails where there weren't very many cars this morning is that last night it rained 1.8 inches. And we had quite a nasty windstorm with steady winds in the 40 knot range with gusts up into the 50s. So I'm expecting that most of the trails are going to be kind of wet today after the 1.8 inches of rain we got between about midnight and 8 this morning. So this campground walk should be dry because it is paved. So let's walk through the Seawall Campground today and see how it looks here on the verge of the official off-season here in Acadia National Park. Well, there's the entrance station ahead, and doesn't look like there's a big line to check in today, so it should be pretty quiet. I've seen one other person so far who was walking out just as I entered. So we'll continue up here, and I think I'm gonna walk B-loop. And while we're doing it, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the Seawall Campground. I'll start out by saying that the land that the Seawall Campground is on here at the Seawall area was acquired by the federal government in 1919, right after Acadia National Park was officially designated as, back then, Lafayette National Park. But it wasn't, this land was not acquired to be part of the national park. It was acquired to be part of the U.S. Navy radio station, which existed at that time over at Otter Cliffs, and they wanted to separate their reception and transmission facilities, so they acquired this land and built the radio transmission towers over here. Now, I have been unable to find pictures of those towers, so I don't have any idea what they look like. I do know that there was a house where the sort of National Park Service residence for summer employees is located, which is right out this little side road here, a couple hundred feet. And that house was part of the radio station. The radio station finally closed down in the late 20s. And at that point, this land was transferred to Acadia National Park and earmarked for a campground. And in the 30s, the campground was started. They began initial construction. One of the first things they built was the entry station here. This was built by the Works Progress Administration of the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 30s, and that became the entrance station. And they built loops A and B. And this is loop A, the first loop that I walked around one day during the summer to see what it looked like this year when there were actual people in here camping. And loop B, which I'm going to walk up to in just a little bit. Now there are 4 loops in the campground now, A, B, C, and D. C is the RV loop. It was the 3rd loop that was built later in the 30s. And loop D was not added, which is the tent camping loop, or walk-in tent camping loop, until much later, simply because the land that it's on did not belong to Acadia National Park. There was a block of land that was still private, and it was surrounded by the national park, and that land was not transferred to the national park until the 50s, when Loop D was finally built. And on the deed for that land is transferred to the park on, there is a specific exception written into the deed. Now that land, all of this land in fact, was part of the Dolliver family homestead, which dated back to the 1840s or so. And in the block of land that was transferred in the 50s, that land included the Dolliver family cemetery. And I have visited that cemetery and other videos. It is accessible by walking out Loop D and cutting across some of the campsites. There's a road over there that you can walk down that goes to Loop A, and when you get to Loop A, there's the tiny little sort of 30 by 30 foot Dolliver family cemetery. And the deed required that the National Park Service allow members of the Dolliver family to enter the park whenever they wanted, to maintain and visit their family plot. And as far as I know, that's still in force today. And that because the little cemetery is still there. So here we are going into Loop B. And this is a tent camping loop. And you can see it's pretty quiet. They did not open up all the sites in here this year. And they've already got, if they did open this one, they've already propped the picnic table up for the winter. So we'll walk the loop. I think that we won't necessarily go this way, because right at the entrance, if you go counterclockwise, which is the normal driving direction, there is a small obstruction. Well, I think I can get around it. This probably came down in last night's storm, where we had very strong easterly winds, and this tree has fallen, so it goes from east to west. So actually, I don't think I'm going to go through there, not because it's difficult to get through there, but because right now is the height of fall tick season. So you do not want to go and brush up against any brush if you can avoid it, because there's a good chance that you'll pick up a deer tick on your clothing. So what I'm going to do is walk down to the next campsite, which kind of connects with the first campsite on the other side of the tree, and I'll cut through the campsites. So I was anticipating that there might be a couple of trees down here in the campground, and I am not disappointed. Okay, here's the path that goes over to the restrooms, and you can see they've got these campsites with the picnic tables all propped up for the winter, and we can just cut through this campsite and come out on the other side of the fallen tree without brushing up against any potentially tick-infested branches. Okay, this is campsite 2. There's our fallen tree obstruction, and we'll see what the rest of Bee Loop looks like. I like this loop because it's quite a pleasant loop to walk. It's the most forested of all the camp loops in the campground here, and as I said, it's a tent camping loop. Parking area is not big enough for anything except maybe a small Class B or van type RV. Couldn't bring a trailer in here, just isn't room. And it's a fairly small loop. I think there are 27 sites, although they are numbered up through 28. One of them in the low teens doesn't exist. So here we go. Water. They've turned the water off, I can see, because the valves are open, but no water's coming out. And nice little campsites. This one is right behind the entrance station. I don't know if you can make it out through the woods there, but it's there. But this is a peaceful campsite. The only real noise here, you can probably hear, that's the surf left over from last night's storm, because we're only about 100 yards from the ocean. And here is another tree down across Bee Loop. Well, I don't see any way around this one. If I want to keep going, I'm going to have to climb over. Okay, that wasn't too hard to get around, except with I have a bad knee, makes it hard for me to climb over things like that. As we continue, and I can see that campsite number 8 is blocked by the 3rd tree down for this winter. And we'll continue around and see just how much more damage this storm did to Bee Loop. Okay, I'm back here at sites 20, 21, and 22. No trees down here. So far, been 3 trees down, 2 of them across the road and 1 across the entrance of a campsite as we work our way out of Bee Loop. And I can see that there won't be any more trees down as we continue. Because this is where I went around the first tree that was down. And the campground is put away for the winter. So I think what I'm going to do is go back and check out A Loop to see if there are any trees down there. As we can see, the exit for B Loop right up here. Okay, this is A Loop. First loop you come to after the entrance station. And I'll walk around it and see if there are any trees down in here. I don't see any yet. Doesn't mean there won't be some. I did walk this loop once during the summer, and the first 5 or 6 campsites in here were closed off. They weren't using them this year. And they had the picnic tables right at the entrance. That picnic table, for example, was up here blocking the entrance. Had a sign on it saying that the site was closed for the season, but they've moved them all back to their normal places, and tilted them up so that hopefully they won't accumulate as much snow as they would if they were flat. In most cases, there's one over here that's still flat. And since I decided to walk this loop, and I mentioned it earlier, we will walk back and take a brief look at the Dolliver family cemetery. It's just up here, another couple hundred yards. Okay, I'm nearing the back of A Loop now, and right here at the access to campsite 16 is where you can turn off if you want to visit the Dolliver family cemetery. It's just back here by this little gate up here. Now this is site 16, and immediately behind site 16 is the Dolliver family cemetery. As I said, it's very small, and if you're staying in site 16, these will be your immediate neighbors. They're quiet though. The stones are kind of hard to read, and we'll just go up and look at the most important one. And I don't know if we can, that's this one. This is John S. Dolliver. He died in 1861. He was born in Southwest Harbor, which was then part of the town of Tremont in 1800. His family moved here in the late 1790s, and he acquired this land in the late 1830s or around 1840 and homesteaded it. So here's this little cemetery at the back of A Loop. I think I'll try to put in a picture of two of John S. Dolliver's sons on the property here out at the beach at this point. Alright, here's the picture of the two Dolliver brothers. Two of the Dolliver brothers. These are John Dolliver's sons. Now, this picture is from the late 1890s. Bear in mind that their father died in 1861. They were born, I believe, in the 1820s. So they're in their 70s in this picture. I'm around 2/3 of the way around A Loop now, and so far I haven't had any trees down across the road, and the entrance to the loop is right up there, just passing site 30. I believe there are 37 or 38 sites in this loop, so it looks like you can still walk around this loop without climbing over any fallen trees. There might still be one down in a campsite, but so far I haven't seen any trees across a campsite. Now, the National Park Service will not be clearing any of these fallen trees until next spring, when they get the campground ready for opening, which they'll open again sometime in May. So this any fallen trees will block the road all winter. So B Loop, which is one of my favorite loops to walk, is going to have at least 2 trees down across the road for the rest of the winter. And so far, A Loop looks pretty clear. Yep, coming up on the last site and the entrance to the loop. Last site is right here, site number 38. You can see the number on the road. And no trees down across the road, and no trees down in any of the campsites on this loop. I'm not going to walk the other loops today. Save that for a little later in the fall. So, hope you enjoyed having a little walk here in Acadia National Park's Seawall Campground here on the last day of the regular season, October 31st, 2021. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't, why don't you consider subscribing to my channel and clicking that notification bell so you'll get a notification when my next video about Acadia National Park in the off season is posted. Thanks for watching.